Now, typically when the club head's hitting the ground back behind the golf ball, there's one of those 3 reasons that would explain it. Number 1 is weight shift, right? The more I shift weight towards the target, the more my club head is going to hit the ground more forward. The second is rotation. The more I turn my body, just use my belt buckle and my shirt buttons towards the target, the more my club head goes where? More forward, which would also help me hit the ground more forward. So fat shots come from the weight not being forward enough and/or not having enough body rotation. If you do those correctly, shift weight and turn, and still hit fat shots, very likely that comes from your trail arm or trail wrist lengthening too much. You see here through impact, if I straighten my right arm and release my right wrist too early, how the club head hits back behind the golf ball. When we pull up a good player, you'll see at impact like Adam Scott, the trail arm's still bent some amount, the trail wrist is bent some amount. We want to thank today's video sponsor, Blue Nile. Blue Nile is a website that has all kinds of jewelry for the special occasion, for that special someone in your life. We have Mother's Day coming up. Maybe you have a partner or special someone that you want to buy jewelry for. It's always a great gift. But if you're like me, I don't really know what the heck I'm doing. I also don't really want to leave my house. I want convenience. I want quality product, but at an affordable price. BlueNile.com, the original online jeweler, is the perfect solution. Since 1999, Blue Nile has constantly been innovating and looking for new ways to help customers discover and design the perfect pieces for every occasion. They offer expert advice and legendary customer service 24/7. And Blue Nile offers a 100% satisfaction guarantee, so you can shop stress-free with guaranteed free shipping and 30-day returns. So when you commit to a piece, Blue Nile does the same. You get guaranteed service and repair for life. Need your special purchase fast? No problem. In most cases, Blue Nile can deliver overnight. And every Blue Nile order is insured and arrives quickly in discreet packaging, so it won't give away what's inside. Go to BlueNile.com to find the perfect jewelry gift today. Use the link in the description below with code ERICGOLF, ERICGOLF, to get $50 off orders over $500. We'll put that link in the description down below. All right, guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to never hit a fat iron shot again, especially if you're someone who struggles with too much early extension. Now, in my teaching career, I found there to be 2 really key body moves, which is getting your trail hip and trail shoulder through to the target. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, as well as 1 key trail arm move, which is learning how to keep your trail arm and trail wrist bent. Now, I'm going to show you how to do each of those. Let's just hop over to Analyzer. I'm going to give you some visuals quick of a really good player doing this. Then we'll come back. I'll give you feels and drills. Okay, we got my buddy Adam Scott back here with us to show us a couple of key motions here to never hit a fat shot. Again, 2 of the main body motions, right? The hip motion, the trail hip working through, the trail shoulder working through, the shifting and rotating. And then a minor motion with the arm and wrist action. So I'm going to draw a couple lines here. On the right-hand side, down the line, look at the right hip, where the right hip is here, just kind of the center of the hip, and I drew a line down the toe line. And then on the left, we have a line on the outside of the trail hip. Now let's watch the left first. What we're going to watch with the left is how far forward towards the target that trail hip is going to go. So watch the trail hip the whole way down and through is progressively working forward towards the target. And it's working forward towards the target from a combination of shifting forward, weight shift, and rotating, right? Shifting and rotating the trail hip forward. And we know rotation and shifting both help move the low point forward to hit the ball first, ground second. Now, big key as he does that, on the right-hand side, notice that the center of the hip, where I have that mark, is never going to get outside this toe line, meaning if I put a wall up here forever, that right hip is not going to move in towards the ball forward of that toe line. It never gets outside that toe line. See, it just stays on the inside of that. The center part of his hip, let me get rid of these. The center part of the hip is not going to break this wall. So as it's moving forward towards the target on the left, it's staying inside that toe line on the right. So he's shifting forward and rotating without any of the early extension. Okay, that's the hip motion that we'll talk through. The second part's the shoulder motion, because I could do the hip motion right and still have the shoulder stay too far back. So here is the ball line, and we want the trail shoulder, the right shoulder, to be going towards the target and getting through that line by the time the arms are parallel to the ground. So notice right about in here, the arms are parallel. The right shoulder has gotten past the golf ball, right? So the shoulders are also rotating forward as he's shifting to help move the load point forward. So the hips, right hip's working through, the right shoulder's working through. And then the last little piece, if that doesn't solve your fat shots, would be the trail arm and trail wrist. So if we get him during the downswing, especially on the right-hand side, you can see clearly the trail arm is still bent and the trail wrist is still bent, which makes the club head farther from the ground. It narrows the swing arc for less fat shots. Here we can see the right arm is clearly bent. And on the left, we can see the right wrist is clearly bent back. Now, they don't stay like that forever. They're going to extend right about here through impact. But by the time you get to impact, they still do need to be bent. Right hip through, right shoulder through, right arm and wrist bent. That's how you can never hit a fat shot again. Okay, so there we saw some good images of the trail hip and the trail shoulder working through, as well as the trail arm being bent. Let me just explain a few concepts and then we'll go into feels and drills. I've got a golf ball on the ground, or I got it teed up here, but I've got an iron, and you'll see two red lines. This first red line is even with the golf ball, and the back red line is just to indicate something behind the golf ball. Now, obviously, you know, with an iron, our objective is to hit the golf ball first and then the ground second. So I can be hitting the ground kind of basically just after the golf ball and then a few inches past. If you hit a fat shot, that means the club head's hitting the ground back behind the golf ball. Now, typically when the club head's hitting the ground back behind the golf ball, there's one of those three reasons that would explain it. Number one is weight shift, right? If the more I shift weight towards the target, the more my club head is going to hit the ground more forward, which means that the less I shift forward, or if I'm on my backside, would make me hit more back behind the golf ball. So number one's weight shift. If we want to get rid of fat shots, we have to learn how to shift forward. I'll show you how to do that. The second is rotation. The more I turn my body, just use my belt buckle and my shirt buttons towards the target, the more my club head goes where? More forward, which would also help me hit the ground more forward. The more I rotate on the way back, or just the less on the way through, the more I'm going to hit back behind the golf ball. So fat shots come from the weight not being forward enough and or not having enough body rotation. So to fix those, we need to get the weight forward and the body turning. I'll show you that. If you do those correctly, shift weight and turn, and still hit fat shots, very likely that comes from your trail arm or trail wrist lengthening too much. You see here through impact, if I straighten my right arm and release my right wrist too early, how the club head hits back behind the golf ball. When we pull up a good player, you'll see at impact, like Adam Scott, the trail arm's still bent some amount, the trail wrist is bent some amount. If we take this up and tabletop it and draw a line on the club head, and let's say that's the ground, the more that I straighten my arm, the club head gets closer to the ground. The more I straighten my wrist, it gets closer to the ground. If I bend my wrist, bend my arm, that gets farther from the ground. So to eliminate the fat shots, slightly more bent trail arm, slightly more bent trail wrist. Now, how I usually coach this is I would start from the beginning and only do as much as you need to, meaning if you can focus on just the hip part we're going to talk about, then only do that. If that doesn't solve it, then add in the trail shoulder part. If that solves it, that's it. If not, then and only then do you do the wrist angle piece, okay? So starting with the hip piece, we saw Adam Scott from the down the line. I made a little T here with some golf clubs. One club in line with the golf ball and one basically just in front of my toe line. What you need to learn how to do, and this is one of my favorite feels to play with, is learn how to get your trail hip forward towards the target. So we typically call this right pocket through. Now notice with this right pocket, where am I not going? I'm not going in towards the golf ball. Okay, that would be early extension, no shift, no rotation, early throw, fat shots. I am getting my hip turning through without it going over that toe line. So you imagine this came up forever and this is like a wall in front of my hips and my hip has to turn inside of that. Now if I focus on turning my right hip through, what does that do for me? It gets my weight shifted to my left foot, doesn't it? It also gets me rotated, right? It does the shift and the rotation at the same time for me. So try that first, keep it as simple as that. Take your setup, maybe you set up a little T like this just to kind of get a visual. What I'm trying to do is get my right pocket more forward or past this club on the ground. I'm trying to get it past the club, without going over this line in front. So it's staying deep, but it's rotating. And this is first, because this will help a lot of you. Right hip through. Okay, now, let's say you did the right hip through, and for whatever reason, you still hit it fat. Well, you could get your right hip through, okay? You could get your right hip through, but your right shoulder stayed back, right? And that could be too much tilting, not enough turn, whatever, but your shoulder hung back too much. And that, again, hitting behind it. So it's not good enough to just get the hip through. You also need to feel your shoulder work through. So what I like to coach and feel is as my hip's getting past this club on the ground and inside this little line, and again, that's probably gonna fix, 80% of you. But as I'm feeling that with the Adam Scott, we wanna get the shoulder also past the club on the ground in line with the golf ball by the time about my arms are parallel. So to simplify this, just as you're feeling your right hip through, also feel your shoulder through. As my hip's working through and my shoulder's working through, what is that doing to the club? Making it hit the ground more forward, right? Less fat shots. So the hip's working through inside the line here, but my shoulder is also gonna work through with it. Yeah, and there's another solid one. So that's about what it should look like, right? I had the ball teed up. I didn't hit the ground back here behind the ball by this line. I hit the ground slightly in front of that red line. Not the best balance in the world, but good strike there on that one. So trail shoulder through. Now, for some of you, you're gonna do those and it's gonna help, but you're still gonna hit a couple fat ones because your right arm and right wrist throw too soon. This is where something like the Precision Impact can be an awesome training aid, or the hanger, something to help give you feels. But basically, you need to take your trail wrist and bend it back about as much as you can and feel like it stays bent back through impact. Is it gonna stay bent back all the way through? Absolutely not. We showed Adam Scott, it straightens a few feet past impact for sure. But if you're getting your hip through and you're getting your shoulder through and you're doing the shift and the turn like I mentioned, and you're still hitting behind the ball, there's like a 99.9% chance you're doing that too soon. So you need to feel like the arm and wrist stay bent longer. How long? Probably as long as you can in the beginning, and then you can film it and double check. But you want to feel like your arm doesn't throw down at the ball, it punches past impact. Keep the right arm and right wrist slightly more bent. You might thin one like that, okay, in the beginning, but you're trying to get rid of fat shots. So start with the hip works through, the shoulder goes along with it, and just feel like the right wrist stays bent back a little bit longer through impact as well. Right hip through, right shoulder through, right wrist bent back. And I've given various forms of this lesson hundreds of times, and depending upon the player in front of me, they might need to feel more of the wrist bent, more of the arm bent, they might need to feel more of the hip or more of the shoulder, but I would always do it in that order. The hip goes through, then the shoulder, then the wrist. Now, for me to be able to say to you, hey, you need this one specifically, or no, you're good with that, but you need more of this one. Or hey, this isn't the reason at all, you actually need something completely different. I need to be able to see your swing, and then we can identify the root issues. What held me back for like 15 years of golfing was never finding the root issues to my swing and trying to fix things that never fixed it. Okay, you know that's you if like something works good on Tuesday and it doesn't work, by Thursday, it's gone. That means you haven't fixed the root issue. For me to be able to really help you with that, go to cogornogolf.com, sign up, send your swings in. It costs a fraction of the price of what we should charge from there. The amount of stuff you get is unbelievable. And most importantly, you get myself and our coaches guiding you through the process to make sure you hit it better this season. So go there, check that out. If you have any questions about anything, leave me a comment down below. And I appreciate you guys being here watching.